Welcome to the NewTake Media Podcast, a place where we delve into the secret sauce of creators' success. And today we have a very special guest. His name is Derrick, the creator of The Abductables and the creator of Welcome to Glitter City. You guys can check out his works in the description below, so make sure you guys do that. Enjoy the podcast. How you doing today, man?
Hey, I'm doing good. Thank you for having me on your show. It's looking forward to talking some comics with you.
Of course, man. Of course. That's what we're all about here. Creators, man. So, usually what we like to start off with is your life story, you know, where you're from, your family life, and how you got into comics.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I guess I could say I've been into comics pretty much my whole life. My first memory of comics was my cousin was a huge collector, and he just had stacks of comic books in his room. I live in Texas, he lived in Louisiana, so it was always kind of like a trip to go see them, and we do it as often as we could. But yeah, that always kind of blew my mind as a kid, and this was in the 90s, so it was all the edgy Image era comics, and even Marvel and DC were pretty edgy back then. So
that is true.
Yeah, as a little kid, just seeing like some of these covers and this crazy Rob Liefeld, Jim Lee art, it just kind of blew my mind, and that was my first memory and my first what really got me into comics. I think my cousin, actually, he was a few years older than me. He actually took me to my first comic shop in Louisiana. So yeah, it's been a lifelong love of the medium.
That's so sick. Yeah, I mean, I had a similar story, but instead of my cousin, it was my uncle. He has like this big stack of comics. I don't even think he read them, to be honest. He was a collector. So he collected the comics. And then when I was a kid, I would just like sneak into his room here and there, and I'd be like, what's this? Because I saw the cover and I'm like, oh, that's cool. And it was like this like Batman and Bane cover song. I don't even remember which Batman story it was. It wasn't Nightfall, but I don't know. It was one of the Batman and Bane stories, and it was like a super edgy and dark one where they were like fighting in a sewer or something. So yeah, that's how I started. But
yeah, and this was are you a child of the 90s as well, I assume? Or
no, I'm actually a 2000s child, but my uncle is, so I guess I kind of it's pretty much the same thing.
Yeah, because growing up, for me, growing up in the 90s, that was back when they still had comics in like the supermarket and stuff like that. So you would actually see like the aforementioned edgy Rob Liefeld art just on like the stands in like your local grocery store. Like you'd have this badass cover of like Cable, like covered in blood, with this giant gun pointed at you. It's like, man, this is like the coolest thing ever. So
yeah, man, those covers are so cool, especially the Spawn covers.
Oh yeah, I'm a huge Spawn fan. That's I love Todd McFarlane, and Spawn was always another thing was I grew up really like in a really religious household, so like the whole thing with Spawn, it's like the war between heaven and hell, like that just blew my mind as a kid. Like it was so like out there, and like I think I even convinced my mom to let me rent the HBO series on like VHS when we went to the video store. I think I probably got away with that because it was technically a cartoon, but yeah, that was
yeah, that one is it's pretty dark, so
yeah.
All right.
Yeah, it was always the coolest thing in the world. It was as far as the image stuff, Spawn was my thing for sure.
Of course. So what would you say was your first body of work? Like the first thing you remember ever working on and creating that is related to comics?
So I before I focused on writing specifically, I was always drawing as a kid. I was always, doodling and drawing on computer paper with crayons and stuff like that, and making my own comics. That's definitely, I think I was probably even doing that before I got into comic books specifically, because, going back to the 90s, that was like the golden age of like cartoons, the Cartoon Network stuff like Dexter's Laboratory and Powerpuff Girls and stuff like that. Really, really awesome. Like even we said the comics were edgy back then. The cartoons were pretty edgy too. Ren and Stimpy, stuff like that. So, I was always drawing and creating, and whether I wanted to, be a comic book artist or an animator, like I always just wanted to create. So yeah, my earliest memories of creating were literally just sitting on the ground as a kid and drawing on loose sheets of paper. And eventually I kind of left the drawing aspect behind to focus more on writing, which part of me does kind of regret, because it's easy to say now, but as a kid I was definitely like above my peers as far as like art is concerned. Like, I would draw a picture and everybody would be like blown away. So it's like, man, if only I had like nurtured that talent, I probably could have been more of an artist. But to me, the art was always just a gateway to the stories anyway. So like I said, regardless of what medium I ended up choosing, I always wanted to tell stories. So
I was never an artist. Usually what I did is I would go up to like my friends, right? And I'm like, all right, you ready for me to tell you this story? And they're like, sure. And I'm like, all right, you're going to draw it as I'm talking to you. All right. And they're like, sure. And then I just had them draw it as I would like describe it out, which is interesting because that's essentially what I do now.
Yeah, you were the Stan Lee in that equation. Your friends were the Jack Kirby.
Pretty much, man. Like, I just cannot draw. That's a very useful talent to have, because I kind of wish I could do both, because it would save me a lot of money. But
oh yeah, yeah. Any writer who wants to make comics, that is our eternal plight. Is man. It's way cheaper to make a comic than it is to make a movie, but it's still not cheap. And, yeah, it's, I definitely recommend, if people, it's a cool skill to have. It's not like it's, I don't think you have to be like talented necessarily to be an artist. I think if you focus and, sit down and actually learn the skill, I think anybody can be an artist to some extent. I just never had the discipline to actually sit down and like focus on the craft of drawing. So, obviously I have big respect for people who do hone that skill and, do become actual comic book artists.
I feel like a lot of people have an obsession with talent. Like, I understand it's important and how quickly you can excel, but I feel like hard work and constant research and practice on that skill is more important than just talent alone.
Yeah, absolutely. I definitely agree with that. I mean, I feel like I always had if not a talent, then just the urge to write. But, at the same time, and I'm still way early in my career, but, there was years between, that time when I'm just a kid jotting down ideas and what I am now, which is, making indie comics. There's, I read all the books about writing and the craft of writing. And, I read all the classics that you're supposed to read as a a literary person. And, I took it very seriously. And, yeah, I agree. I think talent is kind of like, they say, ideas are kind of worthless because anybody can have an idea, but unless you actually sit down and make it a reality, like, it doesn't mean anything. So I think maybe talent is probably the same way, where if you don't nurture it, then it's pretty much useless. So yeah, at the end of the day, it does come down to hard work and honing your craft.
Yeah, man, I agree 100%. A lot of my friends don't believe that when I tell them it. They're always like, I have an idea that's awesome. And I'm like, go and write it. Make it come true, man. Make the idea. And they're like, So
yeah, that's what separates the pros from the amateurs, I guess. But I mean, to be fair, like that's definitely something I struggle with too, is like, I have so many ideas and it's like, man, it can be hard to just like have the discipline to sit down and actually make one a reality. But I think a lot of creators can relate to that. But that's just something you gotta force yourself through to get this stuff out there.
Definitely, man. And in terms of creators, which creators inspire you?
Well, like I said before, big Spawn / Todd McFarlane fan. Todd McFarlane is actually, he's like the first creator that I actually like was aware of as being the creator of something, because obviously I grew up a fan of like Batman and Spider-Man and stuff, but those characters, these iconic characters, are kind of larger than life at that point, through the animated series and the comics and stuff. They kind of live on their own, so you don't really know like who's writing a specific run of comics, or as a kid anyway. But it wasn't Todd McFarlane was like the first time I actually like put a name and a face to what was being created. Like, okay, this is his vision. This is the guy who's making it. And his, I think a lot of that came from, I think I saw like an interview that he did, talking about how Spawn was like an idea that he had ever since he was a kid. And it was just like really inspiring to me to see that. So yeah, I'm a big Todd McFarlane fan. And then, as I got older, I got into like the British invasion comics of the 80s, with Alan Moore and
Love
Garth
Alan
Ennis.
Moore.
Yeah. And, so, and then, I'm also a big manga fan, so I'm sure that's a big influence on me as well. So yeah, a lot of respect for the creators that came before.
I would say my biggest influence was probably Todd McFarlane as well, funny enough.
Oh,
Seems
nice.
like we have a very similar background here.
Yeah. Awesome.
But yeah, I mean, I feel like part of it for me was that he put his name on a lot of things, which is smart.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
every time you see Spawn, it's like Todd McFarlane's Spawn. I'm like, all right, yeah. And his name is always written really cool. So you're like, yep, that's the guy right there.
Yeah. I mean, he was smart in so many ways, and, innovator, obviously. I'm sure most people watching this know that he was one of the founders of Image Comics, which was like the first real like mainstream push to for creator-owned comics, and moving outside of Marvel and DC, where for so many years they owned everything as far as comic books were concerned. If you wanted to be a comic book creator, it wasn't that viable to do it independently. You would have to work on the Batmans and the Spider-Mans of the world to kind of make it. And Todd McFarlane, he's like Stan Lee in a lot of ways. Stan Lee was kind of the mascot of Marvel Comics, and in the early days, and he was kind of the face to the brand, and I think and a good ambassador to the company. And I think Todd McFarlane's the same way. He's very charismatic, and he gets his his thoughts out there, and he ruffled some feathers back in the day. He probably still does every now and then, but that's part of his charm, is he's very opinionated, and I think it's fun to listen to him talk.
It definitely is. He'll like come out with like a drawing. He's like, yeah, so this is how you draw Spawn, and then he's just like, woo woo and stuff. It's very entertaining, and then he's just like, yeah, join us instead of Marvel.
Yeah. Yeah, he even to this day he never shies away from taking a jab at Marvel, which is always funny to me.
No, he does not.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't blame him, but
yeah, and it's inspiring because obviously from the time Spawn launched in 1992, and then so much has happened since then with McFarlane Toys blowing up. It's like the biggest toy line, high-end toy line. And then I'm sure he's done some other stuff with movies and the animated show and stuff, but it's like, man, even to this day he's still I think Spawn just became like the longest running comic book series of all time, with like when it hit issue 301, it beat out Cerebus. So it's like, and you could tell he still has the passion for it all these years later, which is very inspiring. So I hope to I don't think I could be the type of businessman that he is, because that's a whole other skill set.
Yeah.
But as far as creating stuff that I'm passionate about, I definitely take some inspiration from him.
Still waiting on that movie though, Todd. Get it out.
Yeah. Yeah, and I actually that's probably a controversial opinion. I didn't hate the original Spawn movie. I thought
really?
It was for what it was. I mean, I could point to 100 different worse movies. Like I think it was I think it gets a bad rap, to be honest. Like, I think people need to
Yeah.
reevaluate it.
I mean, in some ways, personally, I'd say it deserves it. But at the same time, if you compare it to a lot of other movies in the same time period, you are right.
Mhm.
They are pretty
Yeah.
bad. So, I mean,
I feel like I don't know. Maybe I should rewatch it because I could be wrong, but like I remember rewatching it like a few years ago and thinking, man, this isn't as bad as I remembered. But yeah, who knows? I might watch it again and completely change my mind. So I don't usually trust my opinions from like a long time ago because I feel like my taste kind of changed a lot. So you know, who knows? But yeah, I was excited about the new movie. So who knows if that's still gonna happen.
yeah, I hope so, man. He said it's going to be more of like a horror movie. And I
Mhm.
see some people are like, well, that's not Spawn. I'm like, it kind of is, though.
Yeah.
It
to me
is.
to me as a kid reading that, it always felt like a horror movie. Like it was really like, I know, you know, by today's standards maybe it wasn't as violent and gratuitous, but back in the
Yeah.
day, like that was, you didn't see that kind of violence and like really creepy imagery in comics as much, you know, in the 90s. So yeah, it was pretty groundbreaking.
And they also had that whole Jason Sean Alexander arc which was like pure
Mm,
horror, which I really
yeah.
enjoyed that. So, and
Yeah, that was,
I think
yeah.
that's the vibe he's gonna try to go with the movie probably.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, that was I don't know how you would describe that art style. It's like a mix between like photorealism, but it's also like abstract,
Yeah,
and it almost feels like photography in a way. It's
definitely.
yeah, I got that really creepy vibe.
Yeah. All right. So, since you've made a lot of projects, what would you say your goal is in the end as a writer?
My goal is to make stories that people care about. You know, it would be nice to make something that lasts. You know, so a lot of creators, they get upset when they get like pigeonholed. Like they have that one breakout hit and then that's all they're known for and that's all people want from them for the foreseeable future. To me that sounds like a good problem to have.
Yeah.
You know, but yeah, I just in the short term though, just want to grow my audience. I want as many people to read my comics as possible. I'm still very much in the early days of you know, building my audience, you know, one comic at a time. And you know, I hope you know, another thing, it would be nice to do this for a living. You know, I am you know, this is kind of a side gig right now, trying to build things up. But yeah, that would be nice to one day be able to support myself on my own work. So
Yeah, I feel the same way, man. I'm trying to build my community right now. I'm trying to get it going, you know. It's tougher than people think it is. I feel
oh
like
yeah.
even if you have a lot of followers, like, you know,
Mm-hmm.
like
Yeah.
I have a YouTube channel with a lot of followers, but like I have to like beat it in their heads. They like won't they will not check it out. Like every video here and there, I'll like inject my comic book in there,
Mm-hmm.
and they'll be like, you know, I'll get like one person maybe. They're super
Yeah.
like hesitant because a lot of people, because I have an email list, right?
Mm.
And a lot of people are like hesitant kind of to give that out, even though I am giving something in return, but whatever.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if this is like a problem across all types of, you know, mediums, but I could definitely say for sure with comic books, like, man, it's such a niche like market slash fandom. Like even as far as like you know, it's just very small. Like so it's hard to get that crossover. Like someone who's not already into comics, it's like really hard to get them into it. And then even people who are like hardcore in the comics, even they're hard to get to sometimes because, you know, obviously the majority of people who are comic book fans, they really only care about Marvel and DC, sadly enough. So to get them to kind of branch out and get out of their comfort zone and try something new can be very hard. You know, so yeah, you really got to love the medium and just really love comics to want to break in, because you're probably if you're not as passionate about comics as we are, you're probably better off just writing novels or making movies, because it's not for the faint of heart.
Though with movies, though, it's kind of difficult as well, you know.
Yeah,
I know from experience, because I'm trying to do that too. So
oh man,
time. But
yeah, that's why I as expensive as it could be to make comics, I don't envy independent filmmakers, because it's like that times 1,000.
Yeah, there's a lot of logistics in that, and everything is super, like, you think it's gonna be cheaper than it is, but it never is. It never is. Like, I made this pillow effect in one of my short films, right? And it was like a heart rip practical effect. I was like, oh, this is gonna cost like $20. No, it costs like $80 till I get all of it. I was like, oh man.
Yeah.
So you just gotta go in set every time, just expecting to pay way more.
Yep.
Okay, so what would you say the most difficult part about writing is?
Probably forcing myself to sit in front of the computer and actually do it. Once I'm doing it, it's fun and it usually comes pretty naturally. But it's just the discipline of actually, because when I'm not writing, the last thing I want to be doing is writing. I'd rather, and I, it seems like there's two different types of writers. There's the writers like me who it's like pulling teeth, like you really have to have the discipline to force yourself to sit down and do it. And then there's other people who just love doing it, and it's like, I envy those people, because and it sounds like, it sounds like, well, if you don't love doing it, I love doing it, but it's just the mental aspect of actually forcing myself to do it, because it is a job at the end of the day. It is work, and it's fun once I get into it, but yeah, that's definitely always been the hardest part. And I've tried to analyze it. I think the real reason behind why it can be hard to start is, it's a level of perfectionism / fear of failure, because when you face the blank page, and I'm sure writers totally can relate to this, you don't want to write anything that sucks, and it can be very daunting to just sit down and actually do it. But this is something that writers have been facing for years. It's not anything new, and as they always say, it's easier to edit a bad script than to write one from scratch. So
that's right. I mean, yeah, like, and a big thing about it is focus as well. Like, there's so many distractions.
Yeah.
Your phone's like, you have to like turn that off, put that away. I'm usually on my computer when I'm writing, so I just have all my social media tabs there. I'm like, I probably shouldn't click those. So I try to close everything and not get distracted, because if you get taken out of it for like a second, it's like, oh, I'm resetting again. That's going to take like 15 minutes.
That's why I always, I don't know if you've seen the movie or read the shorts, the novella Secret Window from Stephen King. Like, basically the premise is this guy goes to he's like a novelist, and he goes to like a cabin in the middle of the woods. It's like a horror movie, but I always liked it just for the idea of, man, that just sounds so nice to just get away from like all the distractions and just go in the middle of nowhere and actually write, because I feel like it would be so much easier that way. But I live in like a tiny apartment right now, but like one day it would be nice to have like my own office. I feel like that would increase my productivity like by 1,000%, because like you said, just to have a way to kind of block everything out and just focus on the writing would be very beneficial.
And it's also good when you have your own office, because your brain associates that with writing. So as soon as you step in there, it's like, oh, it's writing time.
Yeah, it's like a routine.
Exactly.
Yeah, like if I ever did like kind of make it as a writer to where it was like a full-time job, I would definitely want to have like, not necessarily a 9 to 5, because I'm a night owl and I'm usually up all night. So it'd probably be more like 11 to 7 at night, but you know, some kind of routine that would probably definitely help for sure, to almost like you're just clocking in at the shift and you know, going to work.
Yeah, I agree, man. Like that's that's the goal, is just to be able to do. I mean, I try to write like at least 10 pages every day, whether it's me writing like a script for one of my movies or writing for my comic book. I'm currently rewriting that, so rewriting's always a fun time. What's your thoughts on that?
You know, I'm not one of those people, and I'm probably in the minority because it seems like most people go the other direction. But, you know, I never really understood the idea of like, you know, this is my third draft or this is my final draft. Like, to me, I don't know where one draft ends and the other begins, because to me, like, I know when it's done, and I'm constantly, from the time I start to the time it's, you know, complete, I'm constantly editing one way or the other. Even as I write, I'm editing. So I never understood like that hard delineation between, you know, first draft, second draft, third draft. But again, I think I'm kind of in the minority in that, because I know most writers do have that kind of draft system, which, you know, maybe I should figure out how to do that, because it's probably more effective that way. But to me, it's usually just pure chaos until it's actually complete. And then I'm like, okay, this will work.
So yeah, because I mean, I do the draft system personally, and what works for me is because I think part of the reason why it feels like pulling teeth before you're going is, like you said, is you want it to be perfect when you're working on it. So I think that's part of the reason, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So for example, like when you know, okay, if I can see everything, I can fix it in the next draft. It's okay if it's bad. It's all right. It's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard to do that, because even I sometimes catch myself. I'm like, oh, gotta go back to like page 3 and like edit from there. And then I go and I have to re-edit like the whole thing. Yeah. To me, that's very time consuming. Whereas if you can just like pump out the first draft like that, then you can just see everything, see it as a whole, and look at it with like fresh eyes. Maybe take like a day or two. I like to like take a day and almost like get unattached from the story for like a second, and then come back with fresh eyes and read it and just be like, well, this sucks, and then rewrite it all from there.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'm definitely getting better at doing that, because that was one of my earlier like problems as a writer, was like you said, just like editing at like, you know, I'll write a sentence and then immediately edit it. It's like, no, it really helps to just get it all out there, and then, you know, take a break and like you said, come back with a fresh set of eyes, and you know, go from there.
Speaking of fresh sets of eyes, what's your opinion on editors? Like, do you have an editor? Or
I've never worked with an editor.
I mean, I'm the same way, man. It's very expensive. Okay. So it's very expensive. So I was just, that's why I was asking you.
Yeah, I feel like people, that's why I was hesitant to say it, because I know people can kind of like look at you sideways when you say you don't work with an editor, because it's like, oh, well, you just think you're better than everybody, you don't need one. It's like, well, here's the thing, and maybe I do come off a little snobby in this regard, but to me, there's an editor and then there's like a proofreader. You know, obviously a proofreader is perfectly fine to work with, because, you know, you want to get rid of all the typos and the misspellings. I think I'm pretty good as far as like you know, being grammatically correct most of the time. But, you know, a full-blown editor where they would actually like tell me to change story ideas or lines of dialogue, I would be very hesitant to do that, just because I'm very protective of my writing, and you know, and obviously I'm not calling anybody out who does use editors. It's just me personally. I'm very you know, I want my vision to be as accurate as possible, and I don't know if I would be able to you know, put my ego aside necessarily and let someone tell me, oh no, you need to change this, because, you know, but honestly, I think that's that's what's enjoyable about writers in general, is like seeing their personality come through in the writing, and seeing like, you know, a script that I would write, like let's say we had like a general plot outline that was the same, and then you and me decided to script it out, I'm sure our scripts will be completely different. And that's part of the fun, is like seeing that different vision from a different writer. And you want that vision to be as pure as possible, I think.
I feel like it's good to have a writer have their own unique vision.
Mhm.
I also understand other people's arguments where they say, well, you're attached to your writing, so you may not see some of the flaws within it.
Yeah, definitely.
Know what I mean?
Yeah, that's for sure. I mean, and I've noticed, obviously being a fan of other writers, you sometimes you see their ticks and like these things that come out in their writing, like their crutches, I guess you could call them, like that it's like that you could point out, like, okay, this is definitely like, this is take Stephen King, for instance, like, the biggest writer in the world. Like a Stephen King novel when you read it, like his voice is just all over it. And like, as much as I enjoy his books, like if I was his editor, I'd be like, yo, you cut this down. Like you're overwriting way too much. This novel could be like half the size. But then again, if that were the case, then it wouldn't be as pure of a Stephen King novel. You kind of got to take the good and the bad.
Yeah, that's kind of the thing, is like some people, for example, not calling out anyone because I know it might start a war here. But for example, Zack Snyder's movies, right? Uses a lot of slow motion, but that's his thing, though. It's not like he does it badly; he does it very well. So it's like, I mean, you can criticize it, but that's kind of, you recognize him for it, though. I don't know. It's interesting.
Yeah, that really is a perfect example, because that's probably why Zack Snyder is so divisive. Like, you either love his movies or you hate them. Yeah. But yeah, if some people might hate the slow-mo, but so many people do. It's like, if you took it out, it wouldn't feel like a Zack Snyder movie. So yeah, it's interesting. But yeah, I'm sure there's like really great works of art that were, heavily edited that we don't know about, behind the scenes. So it's, you never know what's going to happen. But yeah, it is interesting to think about. Like, I guess I would have to really, like, it would have to be someone I really, whose opinion I really trusted to, if I ever do work with an editor.
I agree. I feel like you have to get with someone who's comfortable with your writing style and understands it. Like someone who's actually actively read your stuff and you match with creatively. Because if you guys are like two polar opposites, it's going to be like a war.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure.
So what would you say the purpose of story is?
I guess at the in simplest terms, it would just be to entertain people. Obviously it's, I definitely do want to aim for the higher, have the higher aspirations of, telling a story that really moves somebody and, makes them think. And, I definitely want to put as much depth into my work as possible. But even if people don't read into it as deep as they could, at the end of the day, as long as it's entertaining and as long as they feel like they got their money's worth and really just enjoyed the story, that's all I could ask for.
Yeah, I mean, to be fair, a lot of things nowadays are just entertainment and people are fine with that, So I see no issue with that, man.
Yeah, that's and if you go too far into the entertainment side without the depth, I think you could run into trouble. You need a little bit of depth to actually make it memorable. But yeah, I like, take the Marvel Cinematic Universe, for instance. Like, I like the MCU movies. They're fine. I kind of dipped out after Infinity War, I guess. I didn't really, I kind of lost interest.
That's so funny. Me and my friends are the same way. Because it feels like that was the end.
Yeah,
it really feels like that. And then like now they're like, we're gonna do some things, should be cool.
It feels like dragging a dead horse at this point. Like it should have ended. But you know, as much as I enjoyed them at the time, like ever since that really controversial quote came out from Martin Scorsese, where he compared the Marvel movies to a theme park ride, like a roller
Yeah.
coaster. And he said it's not actually cinema; it's just like an amusement park ride. It's like, damn, he's kind of right.
He's not wrong. Like, okay, no one come and like kill
Yeah.
me, but he's low key right. Like a lot of the
Yeah.
movies, and it doesn't mean they're bad, right?
No,
But a
no, no.
lot of the
Yeah.
movies are just entertainment. Like
Hmm.
they're formulaic. They got a formula going, and then they're like, oh, this is entertaining and people like this. Let's just replicate it. Now I feel like some of the movies do have depth. Like I feel like Iron Man 1 actually
Hmm.
has a lot of depth in it. Let me think. Maybe the first Captain America. Like some of those
Yeah,
movies, like
they're
a lot
good
of
movies. Yeah.
yeah, a lot of the movies do have depth, but a lot of them also don't. So
Yeah, and that's the great thing about, you know, stories in general, regardless of the medium. Like, you could have like the mindless entertainment, and you could have the really in-depth, like auteur independent film that makes you think, and you know, everything in between. And you know, I like all of that stuff. I like, sometimes I just want the junk food equivalent of a story, and sometimes I want to sip the fine wine. And you know, but again, going back to what I said earlier, was like I want the fine wine to be there in my work if people want to look for it, but on the surface level, if they could just enjoy it, you know, very just on the surface, that's fine as well.
yeah, I feel like that's one of the best ways to do it, because if something is too fine of a wine, some people might be turned off by it, you know,
Yeah,
because they're like,
yeah,
oh, this is there's no fun here. It's too
yeah.
deep. You know, like I feel like a lot of general audiences, especially because, you know, they're a lot of people are used to like Marvel movies and just pure entertainment now. They want at
Yeah.
least some of that to hook them in, you know, before you even start. So
Yeah, and you know, things are weird right now with Hollywood. You know, as far as, you know, world events kind of put Hollywood on hold for like a year. Um, so I don't know what the future holds for them, but I kind of assume that, you know, now that we've kind of got all the superhero movies out of our system, maybe they will go back to like that kind of 1970s style of like more gritty stuff, like more personal, like gritty stories. You know, I kind of hope we go back to that, because yeah, again, as much as I love like the mindless entertainment, I feel like you know, it's probably time to get back to some of the more in-depth stuff, maybe.
and here at NewTake Media, that's exactly what we're gonna do. So
Nice.
just you wait, give it some time. It will
There
happen.
you go.
All right. So, how do you come up with your story ideas for your comics? So, how do you come up with the Abductables and Glitter City?
Um, Usually it's just a general. Well, I have two ways. Sometimes I'll just come up with like a general idea. For instance, with the Abductables, which for people who don't know, that's basically a sci-fi action comedy about a an alien abduction gone horribly wrong, but in a funny, action-packed way. Imagine if aliens abducted Arnold Schwarzenegger from Commando, and he woke up on the probing table and just decided to go full John Wick on all the poor little gray aliens. A story like that, literally, that just was the idea that popped in my head. Was, what if you know, because everyone talks about alien abductions and stuff. It's like, and usually they're like, they've got like the state of paralysis when they wake up in the operating room and they're terrified. It's like, well, what if you actually woke up? What if you woke up on the operating table? You can actually like get up, like you weren't paralyzed, because any average Joe human being could probably beat the crap out of a little gray alien.
Yeah, have
Like,
you ever played Fallout 3 Mothership Zeta? You ever play that?
no, I don't think so.
It's pretty much that. Like you wake up,
Okay.
yeah, it's a DLC. You wake up and they take you to the spaceship and they're like working on you, and then and then you can just come out and just kill them all. It's
Oh,
hilarious.
nice. Yeah, I mean, yeah, because if you think about it, it's like, as scary as it would be to be abducted by aliens, and like there's these unknowable entities from far beyond the galaxy. It's like, if you actually just looked at like the stereotypical version of an alien with the big head and the big black eyes and the skinny body, come on, anybody could take them in a fight. So I just extrapolated that idea to like, okay, well, let's really make it hurt and have the guy that beats the crap out of him, this muscly, steroid-infused 1980s action hero, and just really tip the scales against them and just watch him beat the ever-loving crap out of them.
If that doesn't make you guys want to go and check this comic out, come on, what's wrong with you?
Yeah. Yeah, it's definitely a blast working on that, because I think even my more serious stuff always has an element of comedy to it. Obviously, with Abductables, we lean more towards the comedy side, but it's still very action-packed, and yeah, it's a lot of fun to work on.
What would you say your creative process is? So you got a story idea. Now, do you just sit down and write it instantly, or do you outline? Like, what do you do?
So after I get like the initial story idea, like well, another thing I do is sometimes I'll pick like a genre, like, oh, I want to do a superhero story, or I want to do a horror story. And then like, but whenever I get like that initial like kernel of an idea, I just start kind of just writing random notes, almost like stream of consciousness, just like, it'll just come to me like character ideas or plot things, just whatever comes to my mind. And then after I kind of get all of that out of my system, then I kind of take a step back and like kind of put it together, like kind of put the puzzle pieces together, like, okay, now let me form like kind of a general outline. And yeah, I do tend to outline my books pretty well in advance. And I like to do a lot of background stuff. Like to me, one of the most fun things about writing is the stuff that doesn't even make it into the book, like the world building and like the character biographies, where, stuff that I know about the character, but for, time constraints, or in the case of comics, page constraints, you don't have time to like delve into every aspect of their, backstory. But just stuff that I know, which informs the character, that's always fun to me to write. So I definitely try to flesh out the world and the characters as much as possible before I actually dive into like the final script that actually has the plot and what goes into the plot outline.
Yeah, and it's fun and good for the comic as well. Gotta have some world building in there.
Yeah, I think it really does help. Like even if it's on a subconscious level, I think people can sense like when there's more that meets the eye to a character, and that's not just like a two-dimensional, oh, well, this guy just needs to be here for plot contrivance. No, this is actually like a full-blooded character that was created and has his own opinions and, worldview and stuff like that. So yeah, that's always fun to me.
Yeah, I feel like that's what makes them memorable too, because, first appearances are important. So you can't just have a guy there for no reason, just spurt out a random thing just to progress the plot a little and then forget about him. I'm going to just ask you a list of questions pretty quickly. Answer them as quickly as you can. But you can go in depth with some of them, right?
Okay, sounds good.
So what is your favorite movie of all time?
I feel like this changes every now and then, but right now it's probably Ridley Scott's Alien. Which, going back to the Abductables, obviously a big influence on that, because with the Abductables, that we were kind of flipping the script on that original Alien movie, where in Ridley Scott's Alien, you had this crew of humans who are running in fear of this hostile organism. But with the Abductables, the humans, the hostile organism, and the aliens are the ones running for their lives. So, but yeah, I've loved that movie ever since I was a kid, which I probably shouldn't have seen that movie when I was a kid, but
yeah. Whatever.
Yeah. So yeah, that's always my go-to is Alien.
All right. What's your favorite comic book?
Ooh, I'm gonna go with Punisher Max by Garth Ennis. That's I wish I could say Preacher or The Boys, because that's creator owned, but man, Garth Ennis is my favorite comic book writer, and to me, Punisher Max is his best work. It's just the best thing ever.
That's what made Punisher my favorite Marvel character.
Yeah.
It did. Like, honestly, that was the first Punisher story I ever read in my life.
Oh, perfect. That's
So,
the only one you need.
That's all I
you
needed.
need.
That's
Yeah.
all I needed for him to become my favorite Marvel character like that. I was like, yup.
I mean, yeah, it really is. You know, it's like, I think the run's like 60 issues. It's, you know, in the world with like The Sopranos and Breaking Bad, like, you know, serialized TV is so popular right now. That comic book series feels like that was ahead of its time in terms of like each trade paperback. You know, he breaks it up into like these 6-issue arcs. Each one feels like a season of a show, and it's just so well done. And it's like, you know, it makes sense because, you know, the Max line from Marvel was kind of an explicit content line. They were kind of trying something new away from like the standard stuff. And, you know, you could have the hardcore violence and the language and stuff. And it's like, if ever there was a character where that was perfectly suited for, it would be the Punisher, because you don't have, you know, he's the one superhero, quote unquote, that actually kills the bad guys. So you really do need that room to show that. So yeah, that's always been my favorite run, and probably to this day still my favorite comic book.
So, do you play video games at all?
Yep. Yeah, I wouldn't consider myself like a hardcore gamer, because I'm probably closer to a filthy casual, but you know, I'm not a PC supremacist, unfortunately.
I swear to God, if you say Fortnite, what's your favorite video game?
Oh God, no. Favorite video game would probably be well, this really makes me sound basic, but I was really into Halo back in the day, like the old school Halo.
Which one?
Like Combat Evolved Halo, like old
school
okay. Halo. Yeah. Yeah, that was always my go-to. You know, and I was always like an Xbox guy. You know, I had like I was never really PlayStation guy. For what it's worth, right now I'm playing Arkham Knight and really loving it. You know, it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah, actually, you know, and I love RPGs, so I might go with like Skyrim, or like you mentioned Fallout. I guess I never played the DLC because I did play Fallout 3 in New Vegas, but I guess I missed that DLC. But yeah, it's you know, any of the like the AAA games on the consoles I'm probably going to be into.
My comic book grandpa, right? It has like these futuristic steampunk armors and stuff, like, and weapons, right?
Oh, there you go.
So it's all like steampunk machinery inside of like a fantastical world. So
nice.
So I mod in Fallout 4, which is essentially making a game within a game.
Yeah.
Right? So I'm making that armor set within the game, and you're going to be able to read the comic within the game, and you're going to be in like one of the characters' homes and stuff like that. So
that's very cool.
Yeah. So if you're on Xbox, which is good because their mods aren't limited, then you can actually download that when it's done.
I think you're breaking new ground with that. I don't think anybody's done something like that before. That's really cool.
I don't think so either. I mean, I'm surprised I even got, because I suck at 3D modeling just like I suck at drawing. So I was surprised I was able to get somebody.
I'm always thinking, like, because you know, we're in kind of a golden age of indie comics in a way right now, with crowdfunding, and I feel like it's never been easier to make your own comics. But at the same, the flip side of that is that there's so many people making comics that it's hard to stand out. So I'm always thinking, like, you know, what can I do to stand out? So that's definitely you know, smart on your part to do something like that, where you know, to get more eyes on your comic and promote it in a weird way. So yeah.
I feel like a lot of people don't even know crowdfunding's a thing. It's so interesting to me. Like so many huge people, like, who actually have a huge following. They like don't know it exists, and they are trying to like wait for somebody else. The reason I created my company, NewTake Media, is because I don't want to wait for anyone's approval, right? Like, I submitted my comic to Image Comics like a long time ago, and obviously they never got back to me. So I was like, wait. I was like, why am I like submitting? I'm just gonna do it myself. And then same thing with the movies. I'm like, I'm not waiting for Hollywood. Like it's gonna take like my
Yeah.
whole life. Screw that. I'm gonna just be the company that does this.
Hell yeah. Yeah.
So
And that's what I mean by like you calling this kind of a golden age, because like, you know, crowdfunding obviously has been around for years, but I feel like at least with comic books specifically, it's really kind of taken more of a hold in recent years, obviously. And you know, it is so much better because, you know, instead of pitching your book to, like you said, Image, and, you know, not hearing back, either not hearing back for like 8 months or not hearing back at all, and you just kind of twiddle your thumbs while you're waiting for approval, or you could just sell your book directly to the audience and you know, let them decide. It's just so much better. And you know, I was in the same boat, you know, before you know, I really started taking things seriously back in 2018. You know, before that, you know, I had submitted stuff here and there to some of the comic book companies, but like you said, you never hear back. And you know, it honestly, I feel like the mainstream comic book industry, it's all about who you know. And you know, unless you're like friends with the editors and stuff, like it's going to be really hard to break in. So it's just such a better dynamic now with crowdfunding, where all you have to worry about is your actual audience that you build and your readers, and you know, no gatekeepers.
what do you think you're best at? So for example, for me, I think what I'm best at writing is probably horror and dark stories. I think those are what I'm the best at because I feel like that's what I grew up with. That's what I've watched like my whole life. So I'm like I understand the art form of those things. What would you say yours is?
I don't know that I could pick like a specific genre, but I think if I took a step back and looked at my own work, I think I would say it is that mixture of like comedy with more emphasis on drama. Like, for example, you know, we talked about The Abductables. Obviously, that the premise is really, you know, outrageous, and it's comedic. Even when you just pitch it, it makes people laugh. But even in a book like that, which is full of all the probe jokes you could hope for, and you know, everything you could want in a comedic sci-fi book about alien abductions. Even in a book like that, there's these moments that come unexpectedly, you know, that are unexpectedly dramatic and, you know, even heartfelt at times. And I think that's probably what I'm best at, is that mixture of the absurd and the obscene with the profound, I guess, not to sound too pretentious about it, but
Usually what we like to finish off with is a creator's secret sauce. So you've had multiple successful Kickstarters from what I've seen. Like they seem to be pretty successful. So what is your secret sauce to that success?
I wish I knew.
No idea. Yeah. Blind luck, I guess.
I mean, that's the sad thing is like, you know, I am on my third successful crowdfunding campaign, which is crazy to think about, and really, you know, something I don't take for granted at all. It's really, you know, I think I got lucky in a lot of ways because, you know, with crowdfunding, a lot of it is right place, the right time. The stars kind of have to align in a certain way because you know, you see really like grade A projects not get funded, and it's really just a matter of, for whatever reason, it fell through the cracks and people just didn't see it. So I think I did get lucky in that regard. But yeah, three campaigns in, and I still feel like, you know, on the logistics, I know what I'm doing. Like, I know how to, you know, get things done and, you know, get things out on time and get the books printed and shipped. All that's fine. But like actually like figuring out like how to get the eyes on the product. All I can really say is that, you know, I started building my name up, hopefully, you know, that attempted to build my name up back in 2018. Just probably my biggest social media presence is Twitter, which I wish I could understand Facebook, because everyone says that 99% of crowdfunding backers come from Facebook, but I never could get behind it. I never understood it.
I'm trying it right now, dude. I just don't get it. For me, Facebook is personally very difficult to use. I mean, I understand it. Like, I understand like the algorithms, and I understand how to use it, but it's just annoying. Like, I just do not like using it. Twitter is so much more effective for me.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm the same exact way. And but one really vital thing about, if you're going to crowdfund a book in this day and age, is like YouTube. And everyone says build your channel. I did that. I tried to do that last year, where I uploaded a video a day for like a good 6 months, like leading up to my campaign, just because they say YouTube is so important. I still haven't found my niche in YouTube. I really don't know what to do with it. But that being said, the great thing about YouTube is that if you're a crowdfunding creator and you have a project, what you can do is you can actually, set up your own little press tour to get the word out. Reach out to people who have channels and who do interviews like this one. There's so many people out there who are willing to talk to you, on a live stream or on a recorded video. And they bring their audience to the table, you bring yours, and it's just like I said, you could really do like your own little press tour. Like I wrote a list down, like every time I launch a campaign, I write like a list of potential YouTube channels, and I just reach out to them one by one and say, hey, if you have an opening, could I get on your show? And I think stuff like that really helps, because at the end of the day, it really is about getting eyes on your project. And so if you can, the more people you talk to, the more people you promote to, the better it's going to do. So
couldn't have said it any better there. You need to do that, guys. If you want to actually build yourself up, you got to communicate like we're doing here. You got to reach out to other people. You got to build relationships. You got to make friends. All right.
Yeah. And speaking of like Twitter, like it always blows my mind, and I see this all the time. People who are currently like crowdfunding a campaign, I'll go to their Twitter feed, and you have to scroll down through like dozens and dozens of tweets before you actually find one that's actually promoting their work. It's like, man, you really gotta, if you're not gonna promote yourself, no one's gonna do it for you. And I know it's hard because, most writers or creative people are probably introverts. I'm definitely an introvert. So it can be hard to kind of, get out of your shell and, like you said, talk to people and, make friends in the community and stuff. But once you get past that, it's you'll find that it's a very, it has its dark sides, and, not everybody's as friendly as they could be. But overall, you're going to find that it's very, there's a lot of very encouraging people in the community.
By go out, I mean, you guys got to go with everything you can. For example, one thing I'm doing for my comic book right now, well, I actually did it already, is I went to my local comic shops. I went to different just shops where people I knew were. I went to just different shops in general, and I gave them a poster of my comic, and it has the barcode on it, so they could scan it and join the email list from there. And it has the website link there too. And I went around like a mall, and I put, I asked them,
Nice.
Obviously, I asked them, I'm like, hey, can you put this up? Some of them take it down, which is annoying, but they're like, sure. And then like you go the next day and it's down. You're like, oh, all right, that's cool. I see who my friends are, but
no, that's I might steal that idea, like it's you really got to obviously social media is the key, but stuff like that, thinking outside of the box is anything you can do to get the word out. It can never hurt, it can only help. Well, this was a lot of fun talking to you.
It was, man. I had a great time. Thanks for joining.
Yeah, thanks for having me.